My name is Olivia, and I'm 30 years old, sitting in a small studio apartment in Seattle, Washington, where the hum of the city blends with the distant call of seagulls over Puget Sound. From my window, I can just make out the misty outline of the water, a reminder of how vast the world is, yet how confined I've felt for so long. I work at an advertising agency, weaving stories that convince people to dream bigger, buy brighter, live bolder. But there's a story I've never told anyone. Not fully, until now. It's the story of being the invisible daughter in my own family, of living in the shadow of my younger sister Charlotte, and of the quiet ache that's followed me since childhood. This isn't just about me. It's for anyone who's ever felt unseen, unheard, or unvalued by the people who should love them most. If that's you, stay with me. Let's walk this path together. I grew up in a modest suburban home on the outskirts of Seattle, where rain-soaked lawns and cedar trees framed our little world. My father, Henry, was an engineer, always hunched over blueprints, his hands stained with ink and his mind lost in calculations. My mother, Margaret, worked at a local bank, balancing ledgers with the same precision she applied to our family's tight budget. They were hardworking, loving parents, but their love seemed to flow in one direction toward Charlotte, my sister, 3 years younger than me. Charlotte was a burst of light, with a laugh that could melt the sternest teacher, and a charm that drew neighbors like moths to a flame. Her hazel eyes sparkled with mischief, and her quick wit made her the center of every room. To my parents, she was a gift, a delicate treasure to be nurtured and celebrated. And me? I was the steady one, the practical one, the one who faded into the wallpaper. It's hard to pinpoint when I first noticed the difference. Maybe it was when I was 8, and I begged to join the school's science club. I'd spent weeks dreaming of building model rockets, imagining them soaring above the gray Seattle skyline. The fee was $20, a small sum, but my father shook his head, his voice heavy. "We can't afford extras right now, Olivia." I nodded, swallowing my disappointment, because that's what I did, I swallowed things. A month later, Charlotte, barely 5, asked for ballet lessons at a prestigious downtown studio. The cost was $300 a month, a fortune for our family. I stood in the kitchen, watching my mother write the check, her face lit with pride. "Charlotte's got grace," she said, as if I didn't. I told myself it was fine. Ballet was Charlotte's thing, science was mine. But the message was clear. Charlotte's dreams were worth more. That pattern wove itself into every corner of my childhood. Every August, Mom took us school shopping at the mall near Pike Place Market. Charlotte would emerge with bags of new clothes, sparkly tops, crisp jeans, and a backpack emblazoned with her favorite cartoon. I'd get a single shirt, maybe a pair of socks, and a pile of Charlotte's hand-me-downs, even though they were too tight or clashed with my style. "You're practical, Olivia," Mom would say, patting my shoulder. "You don't need all that fuss." But I did. I wanted to feel special, too. I wanted someone to notice that I had dreams, not just duties. By the time I was a teenager, I'd become the family's backbone. I helped Mom with laundry, folding Charlotte's leotards while she practiced pirouettes in the living room. I reminded Dad about doctor's appointments, checked Charlotte's homework, and kept our chaotic household on track. When Charlotte forgot her ballet shoes, I'd rush them to her studio. When she lost her favorite scarf, I'd search the house until it turned up. I was the glue, holding us together. But glue doesn't get praised. It's just expected to stick. The favoritism wasn't just about money or things. It was about attention, the kind that makes you feel seen. When Charlotte performed in her ballet recitals, my parents were front row, cameras flashing, their faces glowing with pride. They'd drive hours to her competitions, bragging to relatives about her natural talent. But when I won first place at the regional science fair at 15, they missed the ceremony. Charlotte had a dress rehearsal that day. "We'll celebrate later," Mom promised, but later never came. Instead, we had dinner at Charlotte's favorite restaurant to toast her latest performance. I sat there, my award tucked in my backpack, forcing a smile while my heart sank. I found a refuge outside our home. At 16, I joined a community mentoring program, helping younger kids with homework and science projects. Every Saturday, I'd sit with them in a cramped library, watching their eyes light up as they built circuits or solved puzzles. Their gratitude was a balm, filling the void my family left. They didn't know Charlotte. They didn't compare me to anyone. They just saw me, Olivia, the girl who cared. Those moments kept me going. But they couldn't erase the ache of wanting my parents' pride. In America, we're taught that family is sacred, that big sisters should be selfless, putting everyone else first. I bought into that myth. I thought if I worked harder, loved deeper, sacrificed more, they'd see me. But the more I gave, the less they noticed. It's a trap so many of us fall into, especially women. We're told our worth lies in how much we give up, how quietly we carry the load, but there's a cost to that silence. It chips away at you, piece by piece, until you're not sure who you are anymore. Last year, I started writing a journal. Just a cheap notebook, its pages filled with moments I felt invisible. Like the time I planned a family barbecue and Mom thanked Charlotte for the wonderful idea. Or when I fixed Dad's laptop and he called Charlotte our little tech genius. Writing those moments down was like holding a mirror to my life. I saw the pattern, clear and undeniable, but I also saw something else: me strength, my heart, my value. I wasn't just the practical sister. I was a woman with dreams, with fire, with a voice waiting to be heard. That journal changed me. It wasn't about blaming my family. It was about reclaiming myself. Each entry was a step toward understanding why I let myself disappear, why I accepted less than I deserved. I started asking hard questions. What would happen if I stopped playing the good daughter? What if I demanded to be seen? Those questions terrified me, but they also sparked something new: a determination to rewrite my story. If you've ever felt like your family doesn't see the real you, I understand. It's a heavy, lonely weight. But it's also the beginning of something powerful. A journey to find your voice, to claim your place. This story isn't just mine. It's for every daughter, every sibling, every person who's felt like they're shouting into the wind. In the days to come, I'll share how I carried this weight into adulthood, how I sacrificed everything for my family, and how one moment changed it all. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what your story is. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going, because you deserve to be seen. And together, we'll find the courage to shine. Welcome back. I'm Olivia, sitting in my Seattle apartment, where the rain taps softly against the window, a rhythm as familiar as my own heartbeat. Last time, I shared how it felt to be the invisible daughter in my family, always overshadowed by my younger sister, Charlotte. Today, I'm taking you back to my childhood in our suburban Seattle home, to the years when I learned what it meant to live in Charlotte's light. It's a story of small moments that left big scars, of love tangled with longing, and of finding glimmers of myself in a world that seemed to see only her. If you've ever felt like you were playing second fiddle in your own life, this is for you. Let's step into those years together. Our home was a modest split level on a quiet street, surrounded by cedar trees that swayed in the endless Washington drizzle. Inside, it was warm but hectic, filled with the clutter of a family stretched thin. My father, Henry, was an engineer, his evenings spent poring over blueprints, his hands rough from years of drafting. My mother, Margaret, worked at a bank, her days a blur of numbers and her nights a worry over bills. They were good parents, devoted to us in their way, but their devotion had a clear favorite: Charlotte. 3 years younger than me, she was a whirlwind of charm, with a smile that could thaw a winter storm and a knack for making everyone adore her. Teachers called her gifted. Neighbors stopped to chat with her, not me. And my parents? They looked at her like she was the answer to every question they'd ever asked. I was 9 when I first felt the weight of being the other daughter. I'd spent weeks begging to join the school's science club, dreaming of launching model rockets into the cloudy Seattle sky. The fee was $20, a small price for a big dream. Dad sat me down, his face tired but kind. "Money's tight, Olivia. Maybe next year." I nodded, my throat tight, because I'd learned early to swallow disappointment. A month later, Charlotte, barely 6, twirled into the living room and announced she wanted to learn ballet. Not at the community center, but at a fancy downtown studio where lessons cost $300 a month. I was in the kitchen, drying dishes, when Mom wrote the check, her eyes shining. "Charlotte's got such grace," she said, as if I were invisible beside her. I stared at the floor, telling myself it was fine. Charlotte needed this. I didn't. But, deep down, I wondered why my dreams were always the ones to wait. That moment wasn't isolated. It was a thread in a tapestry of favoritism that colored my childhood. Every August, Mom took us school shopping at the mall near Pike Place Market. Charlotte would skip through stores, piling up new clothes, glittery tops, crisp jeans, a backpack with her favorite cartoon character. I'd get a single shirt, maybe a pair of socks, and a stack of Charlotte's hand-me-downs, even though they were too small or nothing like my style. "You're practical, Olivia," Mom would say, her voice gentle, but final, practical. That word became my cage, locking me into a role I didn't choose. I wanted to be more than practical. I wanted to be seen, to be celebrated, to be the one whose dreams mattered. By 12, I'd become the family's unspoken caretaker. I folded laundry while Charlotte practiced ballet in the living room, her music drowning out my thoughts. I reminded Dad about his meetings, checked Charlotte's homework, and made sure the dishwasher ran before bed. When Charlotte forgot her ballet shoes, I'd bike to her studio to deliver them. When she lost her favorite hair clip, I'd search the house until it turned up. I was the one who kept things together, but no one noticed the glue. They noticed Charlotte, her recitals, her laughter, her effortless charm. At her ballet performances, Mom and Dad were front row, cameras flashing, their pride a tangible thing. They'd drive hours to her competitions, returning with stories of her natural talent. But when I won a regional science fair at 14, my project on solar energy earning a blue ribbon, they weren't there. Charlotte had a rehearsal. "We'll celebrate soon," Mom said. But the celebration never came. Instead, we ate at Charlotte's favorite diner, toasting her latest pirouette. The favoritism wasn't just about things or time. It was about love, the kind that makes you feel whole. Charlotte's smallest achievements were met with applause, while mine were met with nods, if anything at all. I remember showing Dad a poem I wrote for English class, one my teacher called remarkable. He glanced at it, said, "Nice work," then turned to Charlotte to ask about her latest dance routine. That moment, like so many others, taught me to shrink, to expect less, to believe my worth was tied to how little I asked for. But I wasn't alone in those years. At 15, I joined a community mentoring program, spending Saturdays at a local library helping younger kids with science projects. Their curiosity was a lifeline. We'd build circuits, launch bottle rockets, or just read books about the stars. Those kids didn't know Charlotte. They didn't compare me to anyone. They saw me, Olivia, the girl who made science fun, who listened, who cared. Their smiles were a mirror, reflecting a version of myself I'd almost forgotten. Capable, kind, worthy. Those hours were my sanctuary, a place where I could be more than practical. In America, we're raised to believe family comes first, especially for big sisters. You're supposed to be the rock, the one who holds it together no matter what. I leaned into that role, thinking if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they'd see me. But the more I gave, the less they noticed. It's a trap I think so many of us fall into, believing our value lies in how much we sacrifice, how silently we carry the load. But silence has a cost. It erodes you, bit by bit, until you're not sure where you end and your family's expectations begin. Looking back, those childhood years were a crucible, forging both my strength and my pain. I learned to be resilient, to find joy in small things, to keep going even when no one clapped. But I also learned to hide my hurt, to accept less than I deserved, to believe love was something I had to earn. If you've ever felt like the other sibling, the one who's always in the background, you know this ache. It's not just about the missed opportunities or the overlooked achievements. It's about wanting to be loved for who you are, not what you do. Those years set the stage for what came next, a life of quiet sacrifices that nearly broke me. If this story is hitting home, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what your own childhood taught you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this isn't just about growing up in Charlotte's light, it's about finding my own. And I'm not done yet. Hey there. It's Olivia again, speaking from my little corner of Seattle, where the rain never seems to stop, and the weight of my choices lingers like the fog over Puget Sound. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, always overshadowed by my younger sister, Charlotte, and how those childhood years shaped me into the practical, selfless daughter. Today, I'm opening up about the years I gave everything to my family, not just my time or energy, but my dreams, my health, my very sense of self. I did it in silence, hoping one day they'd see me. But instead, they saw Charlotte. This is the story of my silent sacrifices, the cost of loving too quietly, and the lessons I learned when my heart began to break. If you've ever given more than you could afford, stay with me. This one's for you. It began 5 years ago, when I was 25, fresh out of college with a marketing degree and a job at an advertising agency in downtown Seattle. My apartment was a tiny studio near Pike Place Market, barely 400 square feet, with a creaky fold-out bed and a kitchen so small I could touch both walls at once. It wasn't much, but it was many a symbol of the independence I'd fought for. Then, everything changed. My father, Henry, had a heart scare. A blocked artery that required surgery and months of recovery. He was an engineer, but his work slowed to a trickle, his hands no longer steady enough for detailed blueprints. My mother, Margaret, was a bank teller, her salary stretched thin by the mortgage, groceries, and now, medical bills. I'd overhear them late at night, their voices low and strained, worrying about losing the house, about making ends meet. I couldn't stand it. They were my family, the people who raised me, and I had to help. So, I started sending money. $200 a month at first, enough to cover their electric bill. I set up anonymous bank transfers, timed for the 15th, when I knew their bills piled up. I didn't tell them it was me. I thought it'd be a sweet surprise someday, a moment where they'd look at me with pride. But when Mom called, her voice trembling with gratitude for a mystery deposit, I hesitated. Maybe Charlotte sent it, I said, half joking. To my shock, they believed it. That girl's got a heart of gold, Dad said, his voice warm. They called Charlotte their savior, their generous daughter, balancing her art dreams with family duty. I stood in my apartment, phone in hand, feeling my heart twist. I told myself it was fine. Helping them was enough. But it hurt to be erased. As Dad's recovery stretched on, their expenses grew. Physical therapy sessions, prescription medications, follow-up appointments, the bills were relentless. I increased my transfers, first to $1,000 a month, then $2,000, and by the third year, $4,000. That was half my salary, a sum that forced me to rewrite my life. I moved to a cheaper apartment in a rougher part of Seattle, a fifth-floor walk-up with no elevator, and a shared bathroom down the hall. The walls were thin, the heat spotty, but it saved me $300 a month. I sold my car, trading it for bus passes and long walks in the rain. Groceries became a game of survival rice. Beans, day-old bread from the discount bin. I stopped going out with friends, canceled my gym membership, and wore the same clothes until they frayed. My life shrank to fit the sacrifice. But I kept telling myself it was temporary. Dad would get better. They'd figure it out. They'd see me. To cope, I found solace in a free meditation class held every Sunday in a park near Lake Washington. Under towering pines, I'd sit cross-legged, breathing deeply, letting the stress slip away. The instructor, a kind woman with gray braids, taught us to find peace in the present. Those hours were my anchor, a reminder that I was more than my bank account, more than my family's needs. But even meditation couldn't erase the pain of family dinners. We'd gather at our old suburban home, the same one where I'd grown up, and the conversation would inevitably turn to Charlotte. She's been such a blessing, Mom would say, her eyes soft. Sending us all that money while chasing her art career. Dad would nod, adding, she's got a heart as big as her talent. Charlotte would smile, change the subject, never once correcting them. I'd sit there, eating food my money likely paid for, feeling like a ghost at my own table. I wanted to scream, it's me, I'm the one keeping you afloat. But I didn't. I thought love meant staying silent. In America, we're taught that family is everything, that helping them is a duty you don't question. Especially as a daughter, you're expected to give, to put their needs above your own. I leaned into that, believing my sacrifices were proof of my love. But what happens when those sacrifices make you invisible? I was proud to keep my parents' lights on, to know they weren't losing their home. But it crushed me to hear Charlotte praised for my work. It wasn't just about the money. It was about being seen, valued, loved for who I was, not what I gave. My boyfriend, Ethan, saw the toll it took. He's a graphic designer, with a quiet strength and eyes that notice everything. One night, over takeout in my cramped apartment, he set down his fork and looked at me. "Olivia, you're disappearing. You're exhausted, you're barely eating, and you never smile anymore." His voice was gentle, but it cut deep. I brushed it off, said it was just a tough season. But he was right. I was fading physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'd given so much that I was losing myself. Ethan's concern was a mirror, showing me what I'd refused to see. I wasn't just helping my family. I was sacrificing my life for them. Those years of silent giving taught me something profound. Love is beautiful, but it can also be a trap. When you give without boundaries, you risk becoming a shadow of yourself. I was proud of my strength, but I was also angry at my parents for not questioning Charlotte's generosity. At Charlotte for not speaking up, at myself for letting it go on. I kept hoping they'd discover the truth, that they'd look at me and say, "Olivia, we see you. Thank you." But hope alone wasn't enough. I was reaching a breaking point, though I didn't know it yet. If you've ever given more than you could afford money, time, or pieces of your heart, you know this feeling. It's a mix of pride and pain, of love and resentment. I carried that weight for 3 years, believing it was my duty. But duty shouldn't mean disappearing. In the days to come, I'll share the moment it all fell apart, when one day changed everything. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what you've given up for the ones you love. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about sacrifice. It's about learning when to stop and how to start again. Hey there, it's Olivia, back in my Seattle apartment, where the rain drums a steady rhythm against the window, echoing the storm that's been building inside me for years. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, how I became the practical daughter who kept everything together, and how I sacrificed my dreams, my health, my life to support my parents with thousands of dollars each month, only for Charlotte to get the credit. Today, I'm taking you to the moment it all came crashing down, a single day that shattered my silence and forced me to choose myself. This is the story of Charlotte's 27th birthday, the day I reached my breaking point, and the spark that lit the path to reclaiming my worth. If you've ever felt humiliated by the ones you love, this is for you. Let's walk through that day together. It was a warm June afternoon, the kind of rare Seattle day when the sun breaks through the clouds and the air smells of barbecue and blooming roses. My parents' backyard, in our old suburban home, was transformed into a celebration for Charlotte's 27th birthday. Relatives from across Washington filled the space-aunts, uncles, cousins, all gathered to honor the family's golden child. Charlotte was radiant, her laughter floating over the crowd, her new sundress catching the light as she moved between admirers. Her latest sketches, vibrant watercolor scenes of Puget Sound, were displayed on easels around the patio, drawing gasps and praise. I arrived late, straight from a long day at the ad agency, my arms full of a small gift and a heart heavy with exhaustion. For 3 years, I'd been sending my parents $4,000 a month to keep them afloat after Dad's heart surgery. It meant living in a cramped 5th-floor walk-up, eating rice and beans, and giving up everything that made life feel full. After paying rent, utilities, and that monthly transfer, I had $60 left until my next paycheck. I'd spent $10 on a handmade notebook for Charlotte, its leather cover etched with a simple wave pattern, perfect for her sketches. The remaining $50 I tucked inside with a note. "For your art, for your dreams, happy birthday." It was all I could give, but I poured my heart into it, hoping she'd see the love behind it. The party was in full swing, with cousins playing lawn games and aunts swapping stories over lemonade. As always, I slipped into the background, helping Mom set up the food table, refilling platters, and cleaning up spills. Conversations swirled around me, but no one asked about my life, my work, my dreams. I was used to it, but it still stung. Then came the gift opening, the centerpiece of the celebration. Mom had set up a table draped in gold cloth, piled high with glittering packages. Charlotte sat at the heart of it, her smile bright as she unwrapped professional art supplies, delicate jewelry, and gift cards to high-end stores. The crowd oohed and ahed, their applause a chorus of adoration. My gift was near the bottom, wrapped in plain brown paper, small and unassuming. When Charlotte opened it, she paused, her fingers tracing the notebook's cover. "This is beautiful, Liv," she said, her voice genuine. "Thank you." For a moment, I felt seen, my chest swelling with a flicker of pride. Then Dad picked up the card, his eyes scanning the note and the $50 inside. His face changed, the warmth replaced by something sharp. $50? He said, his voice loud enough to carry across the yard. "That's it, Olivia?" The crowd fell silent. 30 pairs of eyes turned to me, a mix of pity, embarrassment, and judgment. My face burned, my heart pounding in my ears. Dad didn't stop. "Charlotte sends us $4,000 a month to keep this family going," he said, his words slicing through me. "She sacrifices for us, and you can't even give a decent gift?" The humiliation was a physical thing, a weight crushing my chest. Mom stood frozen, saying nothing. Charlotte looked down, her silence louder than any words. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others averting their gaze. My aunt from Tacoma shook her head, as if I'd failed some unspoken test. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the grass, and never face those eyes again. In the weeks that followed, I found refuge in painting. I'd never been artistic like Charlotte, but I bought a cheap set of acrylics and started creating abstract swirls of blue and gray, each stroke a release of the shame and anger I carried. Those canvases became my voice, a way to process the pain of that day. In America, birthdays are a big deal, a chance to show love through gifts and gestures. I gave what I could, but it wasn't enough, not because of the dollar amount, but because it came from me, the practical daughter, the one who was never enough. I tried to speak up. "It's me," I said, my voice trembling, barely audible over the murmurs. "I've been sending the $4,000 every month. For 3 years. Dad's face hardened. "Don't make things up, Olivia," he said, dismissing me with a wave. Mom stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Stop trying to steal Charlotte's credit. We know who's been helping us." Charlotte stood there, her eyes on the ground, saying nothing to correct them. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking, offering to show bank records. "We don't need to see that," Dad said, his tone final. "We know our daughters." The rejection was a knife, twisting deeper with every word. I felt the weight of those 30 stares, the judgment of family who thought they knew me but never really saw me. In that moment, I realized something profound. No amount of sacrifice would ever make them see me. Not the money, not the years of quiet giving, not the love I'd poured into my family. I was done being invisible, done letting Charlotte wear my sacrifices like a crown. I turned and walked to my car, the sound of the party resuming behind me, Dad's laughter, Charlotte's voice, the clink of glasses. They moved on, but I couldn't. Not anymore. That night, alone in my apartment, I sat with my paints, a half-finished canvas glowing under the dim light. The humiliation of that day was a turning point, a crack in the foundation of who I'd been. I'd spent years believing love meant giving everything, even at the cost of myself. But standing in that backyard, surrounded by family who refused to believe me, I saw the truth. Love without respect is a cage, and I was ready to break free. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, or stood up for yourself only to be shut down, you know this pain. It's raw, it's heavy, but it's also powerful. That day was my breaking point, but it was also the start of something new. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. What moment made you say, enough? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about falling apart, it's about what happens when you decide to stand up. Hey there, it's Olivia, speaking from my small Seattle apartment, where the rain paints patterns on the window, and the weight of a single decision still echoes in my heart. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, how I became the practical daughter who held everything together, and how I sacrificed my dreams for years, sending thousands of dollars to my parents, only for Charlotte to be praised. I told you about Charlotte's 27th birthday, the the day my father humiliated me in front of our family, refusing to believe I was the one keeping them afloat. Today, I'm opening up about what happened next, the moment I chose to take a stand, to stop being invisible, and to demand the respect I deserved. This is a story of courage, boundaries, and the terrifying freedom of saying no. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself against the ones you love, this is for you. Let's walk through that turning point together. The night of Charlotte's birthday, I drove home from my parents' suburban Seattle home, the sting of my father's words. Charlotte sends us $4,000 a month, and you can't even give a decent gift? Ringing in my ears. The silence of my mother, Margaret, and the averted gaze of my sister, Charlotte, burned just as deeply. I'd tried to tell them the truth, that I'd been sending $4,000 every month for 3 years to support them after Dad's heart surgery, but they called me a liar. 30 relatives watched, their pity and judgment a weight I couldn't shake. In my tiny 5th-floor walk-up, I sat on the floor, surrounded by my abstract paintings, their swirls of blue and gray, a mirror of my pain. That's when I made a choice that changed everything. I logged into my bank account, my hands trembling, and canceled the automatic transfer. $4,000 a month, half my salary, gone in a single click. It felt like cutting a lifeline, but it was mine to sever. For the first time in 3 years, I kept my full paycheck. The relief was immediate, like a deep breath after holding it too long. I walked to the market near Pike Place and bought fresh strawberries, their sweetness a luxury I'd forgotten. I replaced my threadbare sneakers, the ones with holes I'd taped shut. I met Ethan, my boyfriend, for coffee at a cozy shop overlooking Lake Washington, savoring the warmth of the mug and the sound of his laughter. These were small things, but they felt revolutionary. For years, I'd lived on rice and beans in a cramped apartment with no heat, all to keep my family afloat. Now, I was choosing myself, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. The silence from my family lasted 2 weeks. I figured they were angry about my outburst at the party, convinced I'd tried to steal Charlotte's credit. Then, the calls began. Mom at 6 in the evening, her voice tight. Dad at 6:30, gruff and urgent. Charlotte at 7, her words stumbling. I let them go to voicemail, not ready for the storm I knew was coming. When I listened, the panic was unmistakable. Mom's message was vague. Olivia, we need to talk. Something's wrong. Dad's was blunt. The bank account's empty. Call us. Charlotte's was the one that hit hardest. Her voice shook as she admitted Mom and Dad had called her, frantic because the monthly money hadn't arrived. She'd confessed she never sent a dime, that she had no idea who did. The truth was out, but not because they believed me, because the money was gone. Around that time, I joined a book club at a library near my apartment. It was a small group, just a handful of people reading novels about resilience and redemption. One evening, I shared a piece of my story, my voice trembling as I spoke about the birthday party, the years of giving, the silence that followed. The group listened, their nods and quiet encouragement a lifeline. A woman named Sarah, a single mom, squeezed my hand and said, "You're stronger than you know." Those words stayed with me, a reminder that my worth wasn't tied to my family's approval. The book club became my sanctuary, a place where I was seen, not as the practical daughter, but as Olivia complex, hurting, brave. Dad called again, his voice a mix of confusion and dawning realization. "The bank says the transfers came from you," he said, almost disbelieving. 3 years, Olivia? Why didn't you tell us?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I've been sending $4,000 a month since your surgery. I let you think it was Charlotte because I thought it'd make you happy. But I told you at the party, and you didn't believe me. You called me a liar in front of everyone." There was a long pause, then a halting apology. "I didn't know," he said. "But we need that money, Olivia. You can't just stop." The entitlement in his voice was a slap. After 3 years of my sacrifice living in poverty, giving up my social life, my health, they still saw the money as their right, not my choice. I set my terms, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "I'll consider helping again, but only if you publicly acknowledge what I've done. Treat me and Charlotte equally, and Charlotte needs to contribute financially." Dad's response was immediate, sharp. "That's blackmail, Olivia. You're punishing us for a misunderstanding." I hung up, my hands shaking, but my resolve firm. For the first time, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't begging for their love. I was demanding respect. In America, women are often taught to give endlessly, to put family first, even at the cost of themselves. I'd lived that script for years, believing my sacrifices proved my love. But love shouldn't mean erasing yourself. Saying no was my rebellion, my reclaiming of power. It wasn't about revenge, it was about dignity. The pressure didn't stop. Mom called, sobbing about the mortgage, how they might lose the house. My aunt from Tacoma texted saying, "Family doesn't keep score." Even my cousin in Portland called, urging me to be the bigger person. Their words tugged at my guilt, whispering that I was selfish, that I was tearing my family apart. But Ethan, ever my anchor, sat me down one night, his eyes steady. "You're not abandoning them, Liv," he said. "You're teaching them to value you. That's not selfish. That's strength." Holding those boundaries was like standing against a tide. Every call, every message, tested my resolve. But with each no, I felt lighter, stronger, more myself. I wasn't just stopping the money, I was stopping the cycle of invisibility. I was saying, I am here. I matter. If you've ever had to set a boundary with your family, you know how hard it is, how it feels like betraying the ones you love. But you also know the freedom it brings, the way it carves out space for you to exist. That choice was the start of something bigger. In the days to come, I'll share how my family reacted when the truth sank in, how they began to see me not as the practical daughter, but as Olivia, the woman who loved them enough to say no. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what it felt like to stand up for yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about saying no, it's about saying yes to who you are. Hey there, it's Olivia, speaking from my Seattle apartment, where the soft patter of rain against the window feels like a quiet companion to the changes unfolding in my life. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte. How I sacrificed everything to support my parents with thousands of dollars each month, only for Charlotte to be praised, and how a humiliating moment at her 27th birthday pushed me to stop those payments and demand respect. Last time, I told you about taking a stand, canceling the transfers, and facing my family's panic and pressure. Today, I'm opening up about what happened next, the moment my family began to see the truth, to see me, and to awaken to the mistakes they'd made. This is a story of apologies, revelations, and the fragile hope of rebuilding trust. If you've ever longed for your family to truly understand you, this is for you. Let's walk through that awakening together. The 2 weeks after I canceled the $4,000 monthly transfers were a strange mix of freedom and dread. For the first time in 3 years, I could breathe financially, buying fresh groceries and treating myself to small joys like a new scarf or a dinner with Ethan, my boyfriend. But the silence from my parents' suburban Seattle home was heavy, a reminder of the rift I'd created by standing up for myself. Then the calls came, a flood of voicemails from Mom, Dad, and Charlotte, their voices laced with confusion and urgency. Charlotte's message hit hardest. She'd admitted to our parents, Henry and Margaret, that she'd never sent the money, that she had no idea who did. The truth was out. Not because they believed my words at the birthday party, but because the absence of my support forced it into the light. I was still reeling when Mom called one Tuesday evening, her voice different, softer, almost broken. "Olivia, we need to talk," she said. "Not over the phone. Can you come to dinner this Sunday? Just us." Something in her tone, a rawness I'd rarely heard, made me pause. I'd spent years craving their acknowledgement, but I was wary. I'd been burned before, dismissed and disbelieved. "I'll come," I said, my voice steady, "but my terms haven't changed. I need you to acknowledge what I've done, treat me and Charlotte equally, and expect her to contribute." There was a long pause, then a quiet, "I understand." I hung up, my heart pounding, unsure if this was a step toward healing or another disappointment. To ground myself, I started a new ritual. At work, I organized a weekly story circle during lunch breaks, inviting colleagues to share personal experience, triumphs, struggles, moments of growth. I opened up about my family, the years of giving, the birthday party where I was humiliated. My coworker Lena, a single mom, shared her own story of setting boundaries with her parents. Another colleague, Marcus, talked about forgiving his brother after years of resentment. Those conversations were a mirror, reflecting my own journey and reminding me that healing starts with truth, not just for me, but for those around me. The story circle became a safe space, a reminder that I wasn't alone in navigating family pain. Sunday arrived, and I drove to my parents' home, the familiar cedar trees lining the street a bittersweet reminder of my childhood. The house felt different, quieter, the usual warmth dimmed by signs of strain. The living room lacked its usual clutter of Charlotte's art supplies, and the kitchen table was set simply, no lavish spread. Charlotte looked tired, her usual sparkle dulled, as if the weight of the truth had settled on her. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, Dad's shoulders slumped. We ate in near silence, the clink of forks louder than any words. Then Dad cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "Olivia, we owe you an apology," he said, looking at me for the first time in weeks. "We were wrong. About the money, about the party, about so much." Mom took over, her words halting but earnest. "We didn't know it was you sending the $4,000 every month. We thought it was Charlotte, and we were so proud of her. But we should have asked. We should have seen you." Her voice broke, and she reached for my hand. "You've been carrying us for 3 years, and we took you for granted. I'm so sorry." The words landed like rain on parched ground, nourishing but overwhelming. I'd dreamed of this moment, but hearing it felt surreal, a mix of relief and lingering hurt. I wanted to believe them, but trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered and slow to rebuild. Charlotte spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew it wasn't me," she admitted, her eyes fixed on the table. "For months, I knew Mom and Dad were wrong, but I didn't say anything. I liked feeling important, like I was helping. I was selfish, and I'm sorry." Her confession was a jolt. A truth I'd suspected but wasn't ready to hear. It hurt to know she'd let me bear the weight of her silence, but her honesty was a step toward something new. For the first time, I saw Charlotte not as the golden child, but as a flawed human sister, capable of mistakes and growth. Dad addressed my terms with a sincerity I'd never heard before. "We'll make this right," he said. "We'll tell the family what you've done publicly, like you asked. We'll treat you and Charlotte the same, and we'll make sure she contributes. Not because we need the money, but because it's fair." I nodded, my throat tight, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to forgive them instantly, to erase the pain and start fresh. But another part, the part that had painted my pain into swirls of blue and gray, knew healing would take time. In America, family is often seen as unbreakable, a bond that weathers any storm. But what happens when that bond is built on unequal love? My family's awakening wasn't just about admitting their mistake, it was about seeing me as more than the practical daughter, the one who fixed things and faded away. It was about recognizing my sacrifices, not just the money, but the pieces of myself I'd given up. In Seattle, where community and independence are valued, I'd learned to stand alone, but I still craved connection. This dinner was a start, a fragile bridge between who we'd been and who we could become. The days after that dinner were a test. I watched, cautious, for signs that their words were real. Charlotte applied for a job at a local art gallery, a step toward financial responsibility. Mom called to check on me, asking about my work, my life, not just Charlotte's. Dad sent a text, simple but profound. "We're proud of you, Olivia." Those small gestures were seeds, planted in the soil of our broken trust, and I dared to hope they'd grow. If you've ever waited for your family to see you, to apologize for the ways they've hurt you, you know this mix of hope and fear. It's a delicate dance, wanting to forgive, but needing to protect your heart. This moment was my family's awakening, but it was also many a realization that I deserved their effort, their respect, their love. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what it felt like when someone finally saw you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about apologies. It's about what happens when a family starts to heal. Hey there, it's Olivia, speaking from my Seattle apartment, where the rain has softened to a gentle mist, and the horizon over Puget Sound feels like a promise of something new. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, how I sacrificed everything to support my parents with thousands of dollars each month, only for her to be praised, and how a humiliating moment at her 27th birthday pushed me to stop those payments and demand respect. I told you about taking a stand, facing my family's panic, and the dinner where they finally apologized, awakening to the truth of my sacrifices. Today, I'm opening up about what came next, the transformation in our family, the way we began to rebuild on a foundation of equality, and how Charlotte's growth changed us all. This is a story of healing, respect, and the beauty of a family learning to see each other clearly. If you've ever hoped for a fresh start with the ones you love, this is for you. Let's walk through that new dynamic together. The weeks following that Sunday dinner at my parents' suburban Seattle home were like stepping into uncharted territory. For years, I'd been the practical daughter, the one who fixed things and faded away, sending $4,000 a month to keep my parents afloat after Dad's heart surgery, only to watch Charlotte be praised. When I stopped those payments after the birthday party humiliation, I demanded 3 things: public acknowledgement of my sacrifices, equal treatment with Charlotte, and her financial contribution to the household. Their apology at dinner, Dad's regret, Mom's tears, Charlotte's confession was a start, but words alone weren't enough. I needed to see change, to feel it in the way they treated me, in the way our family moved forward. The first test came at a family gathering in Portland, Oregon, a small 4th of July barbecue with the same relatives who'd witnessed my shame at Charlotte's birthday. I arrived with Ethan, my boyfriend, my stomach knotted with nerves. Would they keep their promise? Before dinner, Dad stood up, his voice steady but heavy. "I need to set something right," he said, addressing the group. "At Charlotte's birthday, I embarrassed Olivia, criticizing her gift and praising Charlotte for supporting us. I was wrong. Olivia sent us $4,000 every month for 3 years, keeping us afloat after my surgery. We didn't know, and we didn't thank her. I'm sorry, Olivia, and I'm proud of you." The words hung in the air, a weight lifted from my chest. Some relatives looked shocked, others nodded quietly, but the truth was out, spoken publicly as I'd asked. For the first time, I felt seen, not as the practical daughter, but as Olivia worthy, valued, loved. Back in Seattle, the change in our day-to-day dynamic was subtle but profound. Mom Margaret started calling to ask about my work at the ad agency, genuinely curious about my latest campaigns. When I mentioned a pitch I'd led, she listened, asking questions, her voice warm with pride. Dad, Henry, sent texts about small things, a project he was working on, a memory of me fixing his computer as a Kidiach one, a thread weaving us closer. They began celebrating my achievements with the same enthusiasm they'd always reserved for Charlotte. When I got a raise, they insisted on a family dinner at their house, complete with my favorite dessert, lemon tart, and a toast to my success. It was unfamiliar, this attention, but it filled a space in my heart I'd long thought empty. Charlotte's transformation was the most surprising. For years, she'd been the golden child, her art and charm shielding her from responsibility. But the truth about my sacrifices, and the loss of my financial support, forced her to face reality. She landed a job at a local art gallery near Pike Place Market, working full-time for $35,000 a year. It wasn't glamorous early mornings, long hours, and a boss who didn't care about her creative spirit. She started contributing $700 a month to the household, a small but significant step. At first, she complained, grumbling about the grind, the lack of time for her sketches. But, over time, I saw a shift. She began to understand the weight of responsibility, the sacrifice it took to support a family. One evening, over coffee at a cafe by Lake Washington, she looked at me, her eyes serious. "I never got it, Liv," she said. "How much you gave up. I'm sorry it took me so long to grow up." Her words were a bridge, tentative but real, between the sisters we'd been and the ones we could become. To nurture this new connection, Charlotte and I started taking a weekly painting class together at a community center. It was my idea, a way to share her world and heal mine. Under the fluorescent lights, we'd mix colors, laugh at our mistakes, and talk for the first time in years. I painted bold abstracts, she crafted delicate landscapes, and in those shared moments, I saw her not as the rival I'd envied, but as a sister finding her way. Those classes became a symbol of our new dynamic, a space where we were equals, learning and growing side by side. In America, family dynamics are often shaped by unspoken rules: who's the star, who's the supporter, who carries the load. For so long, I'd been the supporter. My sacrifices invisible, my worth tied to what I gave. But this new dynamic challenged those rules. My parents began to see me as a whole person, not just the one who fixed things. Charlotte's job and contribution shifted the balance, proving she could carry her share. It wasn't perfect. Old habits crept in, like Mom's instinct to gush over Charlotte's latest painting. But now, they caught themselves, redirecting the conversation to include me. It was a conscious effort, and that effort meant everything. Ethan noticed the change in me too. One night, as we walked along the Seattle waterfront, the Space Needle glowing in the distance, he squeezed my hand. "You're lighter, Liv," he said, "like you're not carrying the world anymore." He was right. The weight of invisibility was lifting, replaced by a sense of belonging I'd never known. My relationship with Ethan deepened, his steady presence, a reminder that I deserved love that saw me, not just what I could give. This new dynamic wasn't just about my family changing, it was about me claiming my place in it. I'd spent years believing love meant sacrifice, that my role was to give until I had nothing left. But standing up for myself taught me that love requires respect, equality, and mutual effort. My family's willingness to meet my terms, acknowledgement, fairness, Charlotte's contribution, was proof they were learning too. In Seattle, where community and individuality coexist, I was finding both: a family that valued me, and a self I was proud to be. If you've ever fought for a better relationship with your family, you know it's not a straight path. It's messy, hopeful, and worth it. This new dynamic was our first step toward healing, a chance to rewrite our story together. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what it felt like to see your family change. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about a new dynamic, it's about what happens when you dare to be seen. Hey there. It's Olivia, speaking from my new apartment in Seattle, where the morning light spills through a wide window, casting soft shadows across a space that finally feels like mine. I've shared how I grew up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, how I sacrificed my dreams to send thousands of dollars to my parents each month, only for her to be praised, and how a humiliating moment at her 27th birthday pushed me to demand respect. I told you about taking a stand, my family's awakening, and the new dynamic where I'm seen as an equal. Today, I'm opening up about what came next. I rebuilt my life, balancing love for my family with love for myself, and how I began to dream again. This is a story of renewal, boundaries, and the courage to choose your own path. If you've ever had to start over to find yourself, this is for you. Let's walk through that rebuilding together. The months after my family's apology at that 4th of July barbecue in Portland, Oregon, were a delicate dance of trust and transformation. For 3 years, I'd sent $4,000 a month to keep my parents, Henry and Margaret, afloat after Dad's heart surgery, living in a cramped 5th-floor walk-up and eating rice and beans to make it work. When I stopped those payments, demanding acknowledgement, equality, and Charlotte's contribution, I wasn't just asking for respect, I was reclaiming my life. Their public apology and the shift in our family dynamic, with Charlotte working and contributing $700 a month, gave me hope. But hope alone couldn't rebuild what I'd lost. I needed to create a life where I wasn't defined by sacrifice, where I could thrive, not just survive. I started with a practical step, resuming financial support, but on my terms. Instead of $4,000 a month, which had nearly broken me, I committed to $2,000. It was enough to ease my parents' burden while allowing me to breathe. For the first time, I could pay my bills without calculating every penny. I moved out of my dingy apartment and into a 1-bedroom near Lake Washington with hardwood floors and a view of the water. It wasn't fancy, but it was a space where I could paint, dream, and grow. I bought a small dining table, a thrift store find I sanded and stained myself, and invited Ethan over for dinner. Cooking for him, laughing over pasta and candlelight, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd forgotten. That financial breathing room let me save for the future, something I'd never done. I opened a savings account, watching the balance grow slowly but steadily. I started dreaming of possibility of vacation, a home of my own, maybe even a wedding with Ethan. These weren't just daydreams, they were acts of faith in a life where I mattered. In America, financial independence is a cornerstone of freedom, especially for women. For years, I'd given that freedom to my family, believing it was my duty. Now, I was claiming it for myself, and it felt like stepping into sunlight after a long, gray Seattle winter. My relationship with Ethan deepened too. He'd been my anchor through the hardest moments, his quiet strength a reminder that I deserved love that saw me. The secrecy and stress of my sacrifices had strained us, but as I rebuilt my life, I opened up. One evening, walking along the Seattle waterfront, the Space Needle glowing against the dusk, I told him everything: how I'd felt invisible, how stopping the payments was my rebellion, how my family's apology was healing me. He listened, his hand warm in mine, and said, "You're not just surviving anymore, Liv, you're living." His words were a mirror, reflecting a woman I was proud to be. We started planning a future together, talking about trips to the Oregon coast, maybe a dog, small steps toward a life we'd build as equals. To give back, I joined a mentorship program for young women at a Seattle community center. Every Saturday, I met with girls aged 16 to 20, sharing my story and guiding them through career choices, family conflicts, and self-worth. One girl, Mia, reminded me of myself: quiet, responsible, always putting others first. When she spoke about feeling unseen by her parents, I shared how I'd stood up to mine, how boundaries saved me. Her eyes lit up, and I saw a spark of possibility in her, the same spark I'd found. Mentoring became my way of paying forward the strength I'd gained, a reminder that my story could light the way for others. Rebuilding wasn't just about mate, it was about redefining my role in my family. With Charlotte working at the art gallery and contributing to the household, my parents relied less on me. Dad's health improved, allowing him to take on more engineering projects, and Mom picked up extra hours at the bank. My $2,000 a month was a supplement, not a lifeline, and they treated it as a gift, not an expectation. At family dinners, they thanked me, their gratitude genuine. When I shared news of a big campaign at work, they listened, asking questions, their pride a warmth I'd craved for years. These moments, once unimaginable, were now my reality. Charlotte and I continued our painting classes, our brushes moving in tandem as we built a new sisterhood. One day, she showed me a watercolor she'd painted: a Seattle skyline under a stormy sky, with a single figure standing tall. "That's you," she said, her voice soft, strong, even in the rain. I hugged her, tears in my eyes, grateful for a sister who was learning to see me. Our relationship wasn't perfect, told jealousies flared sometimes, but it was honest, grounded in mutual respect. In America, we're taught that family is forever, but we're also taught to chase our own dreams. For so long, I'd believed those were mutually exclusive. Rebuilding my life showed me they weren't. I could love my family and still prioritize myself. I could give without losing who I was. In Seattle, where the balance of community and individuality thrives, I found my place not as the practical daughter, but as Olivia, a woman with dreams as valid as anyone's. This rebuilding was a journey of rediscovery. I learned to set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of love for my family, for Ethan, for myself. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to what I gave up, but to who I chose to be. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after giving too much, you know this mix of fear and freedom. It's hard, but it's worth it. This chapter was about finding balance, about living fully for the first time. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from, what rebuilding has meant to you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about starting over. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Hey there, it's Olivia, speaking from my Seattle apartment, where the morning mist clings to the window, and the distant hum of the city feels like a quiet heartbeat. I've shared my journey of growing up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, sacrificing my dreams to send thousands of dollars to my parents each month, only for her to be praised. I told you about the humiliating moment at Charlotte's 27th birthday that pushed me to demand respect, my family's awakening, the new dynamic where I'm seen as an equal, and how I rebuilt my life with balance and purpose. Today, I'm reflecting on the lessons I've learned about self-worth, boundaries, and the true meaning of love. This is a story of wisdom gained through pain, of truths that reshaped me, and of a message for anyone who's ever felt unseen. If you've ever searched for your place in the world, this is for you. Let's explore those lessons together. Looking back, my journey feels like a tapestry woven from threads of hurt, courage, and growth. For years, I lived in the shadow of my parents' suburban Seattle home, believing my role as the practical daughter meant giving everything time, money, dreams without asking for anything in return. Sending $4,000 a month to support my parents, Henry and Margaret, after Dad's heart surgery was my way of proving my love. Even as they credited Charlotte. The humiliation at her birthday party, when Dad dismissed my gift and called me selfish, was a breaking point. But it was also a beginning. Stopping those payments, demanding acknowledgement, equality, and Charlotte's contribution wasn't just about money, it was about claiming my worth. The apologies that followed, the public acknowledgement in Portland, Oregon, and the new family dynamic where I'm valued, taught me lessons that go beyond my story, lessons I carry like lanterns into the future. The first lesson was about self-worth. For so long, I believed my value lay in what I gave up. Living in a cramped walk-up near Pike Place Market, eating rice and beans, wearing shoes with hole sole to keep my family afloat felt noble, but it eroded me. When I stood up for myself, I realized my worth isn't tied to sacrifice. It's in my heart, my strength, my dreams. In America, we're often taught that self-worth comes from doing, especially for women, who are expected to nurture and provide. But I learned that I'm enough just as I am. When I moved to a new apartment by Lake Washington, with space to paint and breathe, I wasn't just rebuilding my home, I was rebuilding my belief in myself. Every small act, from saving for a vacation to mentoring young women, was a declaration. I am worthy, not because of what I give, but because of who I am. The second lesson was about boundaries. Saying no to my parents, even as they pleaded for the money to continue, was the hardest thing I've ever done. Their pressure, Mom's tears, Dad's accusations, relatives' judgment tested my resolve. But with Ethan's support and the encouragement of my book club, I held firm. Boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about love for yourself and others. They create space for healthy relationships, where giving is mutual, not one-sided. In Seattle, where independence is cherished, I learned that saying no doesn't make you selfish, it makes you whole. When I resumed sending $2,000 a month, it was a choice, not an obligation, and my parents' gratitude showed they were learning too. The third lesson was about the true meaning of love. I used to think love meant giving everything, even at the cost of myself. But my family's awakening, Dad's apology, Mom's effort to see me, Charlotte's growth showed me that love requires respect and equality. Charlotte's job at the art gallery, contributing $700 a month, wasn't just about money. It was about her stepping up as an equal. Our painting classes, where we laughed and shared stories, built a sisterhood grounded in mutual effort. Love isn't a transaction, but it thrives when everyone gives and receives. In America, family is sacred, but it's not about blind loyalty, it's about building bonds that lift everyone up. To share these lessons, I started a blog, Finding Your Light, where I write about my journey and offer tips on setting boundaries, rebuilding self-worth, and navigating family dynamics. The response has been overwhelming comments from people across the country, sharing their own stories of feeling unseen. A woman from Chicago wrote about standing up to her parents' favoritism. A man from Miami shared how he learned to value himself after years of overgiving. The blog became a community, a reminder that our struggles connect us, that our stories can heal others. Writing it feels like painting my abstracts, each word a stroke of truth, a way to light the path for someone else. These lessons reshaped my family too. With Charlotte's steady job, Dad's return to engineering, and Mom's extra hours at the bank, they no longer needed my financial support. When I told them I'd phase out the $2,000 a month, their response was everything I'd once dreamed of. "You've given us more than money," Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've taught us to see you, to value you." Dad nodded, adding, "We're grateful, Olivia, for everything." Their words were a balm, healing the wounds of years spent invisible. Our family dinners now feel like home, filled with laughter, questions about my life, and a balance I never thought possible. Ethan has been my partner in this growth, his love a steady presence. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the Seattle waterfront, the Space Needle, a silhouette against the sky, he said, "You're not just my girlfriend, Liv. You're my inspiration." His belief in me, mirrored by my family's new respect, has given me courage to dream bigger maybe. A promotion, a trip to Europe, a future with him. These dreams aren't just plans. They're proof that I've learned to put myself first, not out of selfishness, but out of strength. In America, we're taught to chase happiness, but we're also taught to put family first. My journey showed me those don't have to conflict. Self-worth, boundaries, and love aren't just lessons, they're tools for building a life where you're seen, valued, and free. In Seattle, where the rain and sun coexist, I've found that balance. A life where I can love my family without losing myself. These lessons are my legacy, not just for me, but for anyone who's felt like they don't belong. If you've ever learned a hard truth about yourself or your family, you know it's both painful and liberating. These lessons are my guideposts, lighting the way forward. If this resonates, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. What lessons life has taught you? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because this story isn't just about what I've learned. It's about what we can learn together. About the power of knowing you're enough. Hey there, it's Olivia, speaking from my Seattle apartment, where the soft glow of dawn over Puget Sound feels like an invitation to begin anew. I've shared my journey of growing up invisible in my family, overshadowed by my sister Charlotte, sacrificing my dreams to send thousands of dollars to my parents each month, only for her to be praised. I told you about the humiliating moment at Charlotte's 27th birthday that pushed me to demand respect, my family's awakening, the new dynamic where I'm seen as an equal, how I rebuilt my life with balance, and the lessons of self-worth, boundaries, and love that reshaped me. Today, I'm closing this story with a call to action, a heartfelt plea to recognize your own value, to set boundaries that honor your heart, and to build relationships that lift you up. This is a story of courage, connection, and the power of claiming your voice. If you've ever felt unseen or unvalued, this is for you. Let's step into this final chapter together. My journey began in the shadows of my parents' suburban Seattle home, where I was the practical daughter, the one who fixed things and faded away. Sending $4,000 a month to support my parents, Henry and Margaret, after Dad's heart surgery was my silent offering, even as they credited Charlotte. The pain of that invisibility culminated at her birthday, when Dad's public shaming broke something in me, but it also sparked a fire. Stopping those payments, demanding acknowledgement, equality, and Charlotte's contribution was my rebellion, my declaration that I mattered. Their apology, Charlotte's growth, and our new dynamic, where I'm valued, taught me that love requires respect, that self-worth isn't tied to sacrifice, that boundaries are acts of love. Rebuilding my life, moving to a new apartment by Lake Washington, deepening my bond with Ethan, mentoring young women showed me I could thrive, not just survive. But this story isn't just mine. It's for every person who's felt like they don't belong, who's given too much and received too little, who's wondered if their voice will ever be heard. In America, we're taught to put family first, to be the rock, especially as women, but we're also taught to chase our dreams. My journey showed me those don't have to clash. You can love your family and still love yourself. You can give without losing who you are. And you can stand up, even when it's scary, because your worth is non-negotiable. That's why I'm inviting you to join me in a challenge I call See Yourself. It's simple, but powerful. Take one action this week to honor your value. Maybe it's setting a boundary with someone who takes you for granted, saying no to an obligation that drains you. Maybe it's speaking up, sharing a truth you've held back, like I did at that Portland barbecue when my family finally acknowledged my sacrifices. Or maybe it's something small, like writing in a journal, as I did, to name the moments you felt unseen and remind yourself you're enough. Share your action online with the hashtag #SeeYourself and tag my blog, Finding Your Light. I'll be there, reading your stories, cheering you on, because when we share our truths, we create a community where no one feels invisible. I started Finding Your Light to share my lessons, but it's grown into something bigger, a space where people from Seattle to Miami, from Chicago to Austin, connect over their struggles and triumphs. A young woman wrote about confronting her parents' favoritism, finding peace in their apology. A father shared how he learned to listen to his quiet daughter, seeing her strength for the first time. These stories remind me that we're not alone, that our pain and courage weave us together. By joining the See Yourself Challenge, you're not just taking a step for you, you're lighting the way for someone else. This challenge is personal for me. When I stood up to my family, I was terrified. I'd spent years in that cramped walk-up near Pike Place Market, believing my role was to give until I had nothing left. But saying no, demanding respect, and rebuilding my life taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Every step, from painting with Charlotte to mentoring Mia at the community center, from saving for a future with Ethan to writing my blog, was a choice to see myself. And it's a choice you can make too. Whether you're 18, navigating college and family expectations, or 55, redefining your role after years of giving, your voice matters. Your dreams matter. You matter. In Seattle, where the rain and sun dance together, I've learned that life is about balance, honoring your roots while reaching for the sky. My family is stronger now, not because we're perfect, but because we're honest. Charlotte's job at the art gallery, her watercolor of me standing tall, shows her growth. Mom and Dad's pride in my ad agency work, their gratitude for the $2,000 I sent, reflects their change. Ethan's love, steady as the Space Needle against the skyline, reminds me I'm seen. But the biggest change is in me. I'm no longer the practical daughter, defined by sacrifice. I'm Olivia, artist, mentor, dreamer, worthy of love and respect. This call to action is my invitation to you. Don't wait for someone else to see you. See yourself. Don't wait for permission to set boundaries, to chase your dreams, to demand equality. Take that step, however small, and know you're not alone. The See Yourself Challenge is a movement, a ripple that starts with you and spreads to others. Imagine a world where everyone feels valued, where no one's sacrifices go unnoticed, where love is built on mutual respect. That world begins with us, with the courage to say, I am enough. If my story has moved you, I want to hear yours. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from, what action you'll take to see yourself. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding, a dream you've shelved, a boundary you need to set. Share it with the hashtag #SeeYourself, and let's build this community together. Hit that like button, subscribe, and spread this message to anyone who needs to hear it, because this isn't just my story, it's ours. It's about the power of standing up, of claiming your place, of knowing you're worthy, no matter what. As I sit here, the Seattle dawn breaking over the water, I'm filled with gratitude for my family's growth, for Ethan's love, for the lessons that carried me through. But most of all, I'm grateful for you, for listening, for sharing this journey. You deserve to be seen, to be valued, to live a life that lights you up. So take that step. Join the See Yourself Challenge. Let's show the world what it means to shine. Thank you for being here. Let's keep going, together, because your voice, your story, your light, they matter more than you know. As I sit in my Seattle apartment, the morning light filtering through the window and the gentle hum of the city waking up around Puget Sound, I'm struck by how far I've come. My name is Olivia, and my story is one of invisibility, sacrifice, courage, and ultimately, transformation. It's a story that began in the shadows of my family's suburban home, where I was the practical daughter, always overshadowed by my younger sister, Charlotte. For years, I believed my role was to give everything, my time, my dreams, my heart, without asking for anything in return. But through pain, revelation, and resilience, I learned that true love, for family and for myself, requires respect, boundaries, and the courage to be seen. This is the story of how I found my voice, and it's a call for you to find yours, too. Growing up in Seattle, I was the glue that held our family together. My father, Henry, an engineer, and my mother, Margaret, a bank teller, poured their love and resources into Charlotte, whose charm and artistic talent made her the golden child. While Charlotte got ballet lessons and new clothes, I made do with hand-me-downs and unmet dreams, like joining the science club. I folded laundry, checked homework, and kept the household running, but my efforts went unnoticed. My achievements, like a science fair, went overshadowed by Charlotte's recitals. I swallowed the hurt, convincing myself that being practical was enough, that my independence was a gift. But deep down, I longed to be seen, to be valued as much as my sister. That longing followed me into adulthood. At 25, when Dad's heart surgery left my parents struggling, I started sending money $200 a month, then $1,000, then $4,000, half my salary. To afford it, I moved to a cramped walk-up near Pike Place Market, ate rice and beans, and gave up friends, hobbies, and health. I kept it anonymous, thinking it'd be a sweet surprise. But when my parents praised Charlotte for the mystery deposits, I let them believe it, hoping they'd see me someday. Charlotte's silence, accepting their praise, cut deep. But I kept giving, believing love meant sacrifice. Ethan, my boyfriend, saw me fading. But I couldn't stop not until Charlotte's 27th birthday. That day, in my parents' backyard, surrounded by relatives, I gave Charlotte a handmade notebook and $50, all I could afford. Dad's public shaming Charlotte sends us $4,000 a month, and you can't even give a decent gift? And their refusal to believe I was the one supporting them broke me. I left, canceled the transfers, and demanded acknowledgement, equality, and Charlotte's contribution. The silence, then the frantic calls when the money stopped, led to a dinner where they apologized. Dad's public admission at a Portland barbecue, Charlotte's confession, and their new respect transformed our family. I resumed sending $2,000 a month, moved to a better apartment, and rebuilt my life with Ethan, mentoring young women, and painting with Charlotte. Through my blog, Finding Your Light, and the See Yourself Challenge, I've connected with others, sharing lessons of self-worth, boundaries, and love. This journey wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about discovering who I am. I learned that self-worth isn't tied to sacrifice. For years, I thought giving everything proved my value, but standing up for myself showed me I'm enough as I am. Boundaries, once terrifying, became acts of love, creating space for mutual respect. Love, I realized, isn't one-sided. It thrives when everyone gives and receives, as Charlotte did by working and contributing. These lessons reshaped my family, making us stronger, not because we're perfect, but because we're honest. They reshaped me too, turning me from the practical daughter into Olivia, artist, mentor, dreamer, worthy of love. The deepest lesson is this: your worth is inherent, not earned, and claiming it is an act of courage that transforms your life and those around you. In America, we're taught to put family first, to be the rock, especially as women, but we're also taught to chase our dreams. My story shows those can coexist. You can love your family and still love yourself. You can give without losing who you are. But it starts with seeing yourself, with believing you deserve respect, equality, and a voice. This lesson isn't just for me, it's for you. Whether you're 18, navigating family expectations, or 55, redefining your role after years of giving. How do we apply this today? First, recognize your value. Write down 3 things you love about yourself: your kindness, your resilience, your dream sand. Remind yourself they're enough. Second, set boundaries. If someone takes you for granted, say no, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself. It might be as simple as declining an extra task at work, or as bold as addressing favoritism in your family, like I did. Third, speak your truth. Share your story, whether in a journal, a conversation, or online, with the See Yourself hashtag. Your voice can inspire others, just as my blog connected me with people from Chicago to Miami. Finally, build relationships based on mutual respect. Surround yourself with people like Ethan, who see you, and work toward equality with those you love, as I did with Charlotte. In Seattle, where rain and sun create rainbows, I've learned life is about balance, honoring your roots while reaching for the stars. My family's gratitude, Charlotte's watercolor of me standing tall, Ethan's love, and the young women I mentor remind me daily that I'm seen. But the greatest gift is knowing I see myself. You can too. Take that step, claim your worth, set your boundaries, share your light. You're not alone, and your story matters. Leave a comment, tell me where you're from, what you'll do to see yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this movement going. Because when we see ourselves, we change the world, one courageous heart at a time.